That's the Consumer Guide Car Stuff Podcast, Sundays at 1 p.m. right here on WCPT AM 820.
If you are struggling to afford internet service for your household, there is a new government program that may be able to help. It's called the Affordable Connectivity Program, and it provides up to a $30 monthly discount to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll at fcc.gov/ACP or call toll-free at 877-384-2575. That's 877-384-2575.
The history of Air America lives here. This is WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
All right, Santita sending Reverend Yuri through.
I'm Rita Foley. The Kremlin is denying that its military is targeting populated areas in Ukraine. There is evidence that residential buildings, schools, and hospitals have been hit during the Russian invasion. Ukrainian troops are holding Kyiv, Ukraine's capital, and other key cities. But today, neighboring Belarus could send troops to help Russia.
Is that Pastor Yuri?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, how are you, Reverend Yuri?
Good morning. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today, as always.
You're welcome.
Hope you had a good weekend.
Very busy, but wasn't bad.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, now we are about to cook with hot grease. Okay.
To respond to Russia's presentation.
Oh,
Later, the more.
hey, Linda. Chewy, Linda Holloway and Linda Watto, is it? If I've mispronounced it, please give me a doing well today. Had an exciting few days. Of course, we've got, we're going to be talking about Ketanji Brown Jackson and what that means.
Such as Russia today and Sputnik. The EU will
And it's
also
just a great thing.
But
We've also got an escalation in Ukraine. So we want to
There are reports
talk
that
about
major
that as
Toyota
well.
suppliers been hit by a suspected cyber
That
attack.
is a
Toyota says
big,
only
big, big,
those
big, big,
suspected
big, big
production
deal.
at all 28
You know,
lines of the
while we're being told we're not going to
starting tomorrow because of a supplier's system
move into
malfunction.
that.
This is AP
It
News.
just doesn't seem like that is going to be the case.
Will he run?
A straw poll at the
Think
Conservative
this
Political
is-
Action Conference annual meeting has former President
Hey,
Trump
Reverend, I
as
think
their
that,
favorite
you
to
know,
be
they're
Republican
trying to pull
presidential
us into
nominee.
this war.
And we'll do it again.
And that is,
We're going to be doing it again.
and Americans don't want to go.
Saturday in Orlando, indicating he will
There's
run
so
for
much, I
president
think there's so much on our plate right now.
again, falsely blamed his 2020
And
election
what are your
loss
thoughts? What are
on
you hearing?
widespread voter fraud,
We're on
which others
Facebook
will
Live
have
now.
evidence.
If you don't want to talk about it, that's more than
Praise
okay.
of Russian President Vladimir Putin.
I think there's still a bit of
Trump expressed support for the Ukrainian.
there's a lack of clarity.
Vladimir Zelensky
Like,
is
what is actually going on? Why is it going on? And what's the role? And so, since I think there's an information gap at a baseline.
Mm-hmm.
We tend not to embrace what we don't fully understand. So I think that's where a lot of folks are.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just get me caught up in the emotional hype. Help me to understand what's happening.
Yeah.
So
Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
There is a lot, and there's this hunger by certain aspects, for war, and it's financial. It's financially driven. And we need to stay clear on that. It's interesting. President Biden's polling just continues to plummet. What is going on?
40 minutes 95th to downtown. Then from downtown to O'Hare, looking at 30 minutes. Traffic still
yeah.
Really, really, really low.
the area at the end of the Hubbard Street tunnel. Inbound, Kennedy, 16 minutes. O'Hare to downtown.
That's a lot.
The Eisenhower crashed near Manhunt
lot,
cleared
it's
on
a
the
lot, it's a
outbound
lot.
side.
It's a lot.
4 minutes either way
So-
between 390 and downtown. I'm
Everybody,
Tom.
we got a lot to discuss today. Okay?
Listen in Chicago on 20
A couple of minutes I've got before we come up on the air.
Or tell Alexa or Google
Always
to play
trying to
WCPT.
see one more thing,
Are
Todd.
you the parent of a 2 to 7-year-old?
Just in
Listen
case.
closely for an exciting free radio
I've
offer.
missed
By
something.
now, you've probably heard of ABC Mouse, the Parents' Choice Award-winning online learning program that's actually changing the lives of early learners everywhere.
ABC Mouse is like a little one-on-one teacher. It has helped her so much.
Right now, we're offering a special radio promo to try it free for a month. But you have to go to abcmouse.com/radio to claim your free month. That's abcmouse.com/radio.
Sponsored by Age of Learning.
Hi, it's Rick. I'm at the Smith's home. Where's Donnie?
Leaves and autumn bookings.
All right, 60 seconds, everyone.
He's out? Come on.
He needs help before his bottom line gets clogged.
Okay, well, what about Cristiano? We still got 6 houses today.
Indeed can help him hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Instant Match instantly connects you with quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your sponsored job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Because facts matter. You are listening to WCPT 820.
My name is Cindy.
We give to and volunteer with United Way at our community free health clinic.
10 seconds, everyone.
Going to the
Very
right
good.
places.
Give, advocate, volunteer, Live United. Go to liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. Yes, we can change the world. We can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Jackson Show. It's Monday, February 28th. Can you believe we're 2 months into this year, going into the third month? I'm Santita Jackson, coming to you from the nation's largest progressive talk station, CPT 820 in Chicago, picking up the reins of Air America, everybody. AM 950 radio is my home in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and on YouTube, the Santita Jackson Show and the Santita Jackson and Friends official page on Facebook. So everybody, Carol, meet Carol over there, and Jewel, and Abraham from Venezuela, and Barbara. And Abraham, I've really appreciated your remarks, particularly about Ukraine and NATO, because you're offering yet another perspective, a very enlightened one, and I think that it's one that we really need to hear. Please call me or text me at 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. And let's talk today about Ukraine. And let's talk about Ketanji Brown Jackson, this former public defender, this judge who has been nominated to the highest court of the United States. She is the first African-American woman to be nominated to be a part of the Supreme Court, and she's also the first public defender. We have a wonderful panel who's going to help us to suss all of this out, to see the significance of this. And so want to hear your thoughts about that. Want to hear your thoughts about Ukraine and the lifting of these mask mandates. I know we're over COVID. I get it. But COVID is still here. So I want to know what are you going to do? Because a lot of the mandates are ending. They're ending today, and they're ending, and they're being rolled back more and more and more and more and more. People are not getting boosters, and on and on. So we're going to be talking with Dr. Deborah Holden and Dr. Shanina Knighton about that in just a couple of minutes. And of course, getting good news from Pastor Todd Urey. Let's get some of these headlines out the way so that we can begin the show. Chicago will have a high of 48 degrees today. Warm, partly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 39 degrees, partly cloudy, warm up there too. In the NBA, the Timberwolves will be facing off against the Cavaliers tonight, and the Bulls will be facing off against the Heat. In the NHL, well, Chicago was shut out by the Blues. The Blues for Chicago. Nada, everybody. Well, in Ukraine, what is going on? Russian and Ukrainian delegations are meeting for talks today on the Ukraine-Belarus border as Moscow continues to ramp up its assault on Kiev. New satellite imagery shows a miles-long convoy of Russian military vehicles bearing down on the Ukrainian capital despite the negotiations. We'll be talking about that with Dr. David Gibbs in just a few minutes. That report is from CNN. The Environmental Protection Agency faces a Supreme Court case today that could challenge the federal government's ability to fight the climate crisis and prevent its worst outcomes, everybody. Republicans are expected to argue that the EPA has no authority to regulate emissions from the power sector. Instead, they say the authority should be given to Congress. What do you think about that? The Supreme Court decision siding with coal companies could undercut the Biden administration's plans to slash planet warming emissions at a time when scientists are sounding the alarm about climate change, everybody. With coronavirus, people who have received a dose of Evusheld, the monoclonal antibody drug against COVID-19, should get an additional dose as soon as possible, according to this report from the FDA. The agency revised the emergency use authorization because the drug may be less active against certain Omicron subvariants. And this is very interesting. I don't know what is going on. We're finding that President Biden's polling numbers continue to drop. What do you think is going on, everybody? I mean, he's doing everything he can. He got a really tough economy, got a really tough time. But according to this report coming out of The Guardian, 2 days ahead of his first State of the Union address, with war raging in Ukraine, with a pandemic that is still with us, with inflation rising at home, we haven't seen inflation this high in more than 40 years. His approval rating hit a new low in a major U.S. poll from the Washington Post and ABC News. His approval rating is at, get this, 37.8%. President Trump's lowest was 38.6%. What do you think he could do to raise his polling numbers? I want you all to call me. Call me. I have a lot that I've thrown at you this morning, but I want to hear your thoughts. 773-763-9278. 773-763 WCPT. Oh, Pastor, I need to get some good news from you today. Reverend Dr. Todd Deary, Esquire, Vice President of Rainbow Push, but his first job is pastoring the flock at the Douglas Memorial Community Church, the iconic church in Baltimore, Maryland. Good morning. How are you? What's the good news?
Well, good morning, Santita. Good morning to your listeners. Well, one, the first news is 39 degrees is not warm. I heard that in the weather report. I'm like, no, but I'll take it. It's warm, but not quite warm. And we still got a little work to do, but we're trending in the right direction, right?
Yes.
But other than that, have a good weekend. Don't know what's going to happen with baseball in the lockout, so I'm making adjustments. March Madness gets ready to start. We're getting through the tournament, so hey, life is good. What can I tell you? You know, aside from what we see troubling over in Europe, we still have to keep pressing in the midst of that here. So, looking forward to hearing what you got going on with your show.
Thank you.
So let's get to it this morning. Here we go. You ready? The alarm's about to go off. Good morning, Chicago. Good morning, Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Come on, get up, get moving. Get up, put your feet on the floor. 39 degrees, that tile's still cool. You'll feel it coming up through the bottom of your feet. But guess what? That's a sign that you are ALIVE. You are alive. So get up, get moving. You got to live today. Fill your lungs. Take a deep breath of life and appreciate the fact that you're getting ready to do something awesome today. Get that morning beverage going, that morning Joe, that orange juice. Don't forget. Got to stay hydrated. Got to get that water. Otherwise, you may not be as active as you want to be. So let's talk about today. Today is the last day of this year's observance of Black History Month. It's important that we appreciate the power of history and being able to tell the story. We all have a story. We all have a story to tell. We have a story that's worth telling. And that story has ebbs and flows. It has plots and subplots. But how we tell it has a lot to do with how we respond to it in the moment. The reason I raise it on today as we get ready to transition into the start of month number 3. Yeah, that's a whole different discussion. You don't have time to waste. That's why you got to get moving. I want to make sure that you appreciate the power of your story, because the first person that you need to know who knows your story is you. Many times we spend a lot of time learning somebody else's story, adjusting to somebody else's perspective, and then impersonating them instead of learning our own story, appreciating the chapters that have been written so that we can become a better us. I want you to be the best you that you can be, because on this day where you look back and you appreciate all that has occurred, how you have made it this far, what there is to tell, who you've become. You're not who you once were. You're stronger, better, bolder, badder than you were back then. And now it helps you to appreciate today with intentionality. And so when you get up and you get going, I need you to walk around and let everybody know, not necessarily by words, but how you carry yourself, that there is more to you that meets the eye. You're a winner. You're an overcomer. And there's so much substance, so much greatness that comes with you. It helps others to appreciate that with you comes an energy that they want to then share so that they can be their best selves too. Here's what I want to leave with you. Paul, who writes to a church in the Christian scriptures, talks about don't conform, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. He's basically saying, don't let your situation mold you. Let your ability to remember and be renewed mold your situation. Take everything that comes and appreciate that with you is all you need to be able to handle it with dignity, with poise, and to come out of it with greatness. Why? Because you have had the ability to remember. Tell your story, but tell it to yourself, and then appreciate that as you hear, you tell your story about how far you've come, you're going to appreciate just how bad you really are, so that you can go out and change the world. So I appreciate it. You've come a long way, baby, but you got a lot further to go. I'm excited for you. I can't wait to hear the great things that you're doing. Go live life intentionally today. Make no apologies for being the best you that you can be, because you are bad somebody, and I'm rooting for you. Have a great day, Santita.
Amen. Pastor Todd Yeary, Douglas Memorial Community Church, that iconic church in Baltimore, Maryland. Indeed, Senator Raphael Warnock pastored there just before Pastor Yeary did. And of course, Pastor Yeary is vice president at Rainbow Push. We're so glad to have him, and always so glad to have him here on the Santita Jackson Show. We'll be talking about Ukraine at the bottom of the hour with Dr. David Gibbs from the University of Arizona. What is going on? What about this nuclear force on high alert? What does that mean? Are we poking the bear? What's going on? We do have a hopeful sign that Russia will be meeting with Ukraine and Belarus today. So we will see where this all goes. And then, of course, we'll be talking about Ketanji Brown Jackson. Who is she? First Black woman to be nominated to the Supreme Court. It will not be a walk in the park, but we're going to be talking about why her nomination is so significant. First public defender to be nominated to that prestigious court. We've got Dr. Deborah Furr-Holden, epidemiologist, and of course, she's the Associate Dean of the Medical School at Michigan State University, coming out of Johns Hopkins University. And of course, we've got research scholar from Case Western Reserve University, infection preventionist, Dr. Shanina Knighton. You know, we're watching. I was a little surprised. I went by to pick up some sandwiches yesterday. And, you know, as I was walking into the place, they wanted to know, are you going to stay? Are you sitting in, or are you just picking up? You know, because if you're sitting in, if you're going to stay, you've got to present your vaccine credentials. And someone asked, wait a minute, do we still have to do this? He said, on Monday, it's all over. I said, wow. That kind of threw me, because I'm going to wear my masks anyway. But it turns out we are going to have the first State of the Union address for President Biden, Dr. Furr-Holden. And members of Congress will be able to attend the State of the Union without masks. What do you say about that? These are the new CDC guidelines regarding COVID-19. They just came in time for the State of the Union address. What kind of signal do you think that is going to send to the rest of the country, Dr. Furr-Holden? Because you deal with public health, and you have been concerned. You were concerned 2 years ago that we were going to pull back too soon. And you said if we pull back too soon, the pandemic will be endemic. Wow. Everything you have been predicting has played itself out. And now we're going to have all the members of Congress the mask will be optional. So what kind of signal will that send?
Well,
this is going to be the new norm. That's where we're headed. The masks are going away. Whether or not that's a good thing for us, whether or not that served us, that's a whole different conversation. But the masks are leaving the building. Literally, you will not be required to mask indoors in places. And I said last week I gave it 2 to 3 weeks before that was the case everywhere. And so, now I'm saying give it 1 to 2 weeks, and that's going to be the case everywhere. We're going to see a repeal of all of those things. The thing that bothers me the most about that is that they're going to take away the mask, but they're not going to put any of the other basic things that we've learned in place. And they're also not going to let people know, there will be no accompanying mass media campaigns, et cetera, to say. And this is what you need to do to keep yourself safe. And this is what you need to understand about, future surges and what it will mean and why we'll bring these things back. Everybody is just trying to, and I feel like it's all lining up also with elections and people trying to, secure their votes. The White House is about to declare the pandemic over. We beat COVID. We're on the better side of it now. So,
Well, the media has done that.
I think,
because when you turn on the news now, Dr. Verholden, when we kind of tried to ease out of this before, you notice they took away the statistics, the running statistics that they would have on the screen. This many people have been infected today. This many people have been hospitalized. This many people have died. Now that's missing. We don't even discuss it anymore because that's how the media, they're bending the arc on this story. And I guess my question is for you and for Dr. Knighton, given the fact that we're from vulnerable communities, Black communities, brown communities, poor communities, indigenous communities, poor white communities, they're still frontline workers. What do we do while this is still out here? And they're now saying we're not going to talk about it. I've heard some people even tell me that they are now looking at how they're now being charged for testing. When there was a time when finally we got to a place where we could get tested. Now it's going to cost you. So before we go to Dr. Knighton, Dr. Verholden, you sit at these tables helping. You should be at more of these tables talking about policy. What should we be doing? Should this be a campaign issue, do you think?
100%. And I think the more inconvenient testing is for people, the less likely they are to get it, and the less likely oh, shit. Oops.
Nope, it's okay. Ouch. I think he got it.
I caught it.
Okay.
Sorry, I lost you.
It's all right.
Sorry, the lower likelihood that people will actually utilize and access testing. And I'm convinced, I know this, the data bear this out. Testing is a really important tool for us. Don't get me wrong, it's not perfect. I'm going to say that again. Testing is not perfect, but it is an important tool to have in the tool belt. The ability for people to identify themselves as a case early and then, prevent spreading infection to other people. Because remember, it's estimated that about 50% of people are asymptomatic carriers.
Mm-hmm.
And we've now just seen countless stories of people who are asymptomatic carriers who didn't know and gave it to somebody else and that person died. Or gave it to somebody else and that person ended up with long COVID. Or gave it to somebody else and that person got really, really sick. So you can imagine the second, third order transmission when you give it to somebody and then they, give it to somebody who dies. So people being able to have access to testing, especially during periods of high transmission. On a Tuesday in sort of regular, circumstances, maybe not as important. But to get rid of those things or put extra barriers up for people to get it, bad idea. Because people will then normalize not utilizing those resources. They'll just normalize that, and that will be a problem and that won't serve us when we go through our next surge. And that's, basically pretty predictable. So this isn't over. We've just now, I think, decided that we care more about, getting back to business as usual than we do about, preventing the unnecessary death and illness that are going to come from this.
Dr. Knighton, your thoughts? Got about 3.5 minutes left here.
So I think I am in full agreement with Dr. Deb, and just as we mentioned, it's going to be the ignorance or the fact that we're going to ignore some of the strategies as if COVID never existed. And the issue that we'll have is when it comes down to, let's say, getting rid of testing, you now end up with people just similarly. I feel like it's going to follow the same pattern as, like, let's say, HIV/AIDS, right? Where there's going to be a lack of an honor system in terms of, like, people actually knowing that they may have symptoms but may not necessarily tell someone about them and be in settings with other people. There's going to be people with colds that are going to say, I'm not going to get tested out of fear of, saying that they have coronavirus. There's going to be a lack of primary care use, unfortunately, not just because somebody don't need to see about themselves preventatively, but so bad people want to put this thing behind them. And we're, again, looking at a government that is not emphasizing the importance of public health. So, yes, I understand masks are going to go away. I understand COVID is going to be endemic. But at the end of the day, just as I've been mentioning before, I would not have a profession. Fauci would not have a profession if COVID was the only pathogen, which means deadly germ that existed. And so my concern is that whether we're talking about coronavirus or not, this showed us that there needed to be more of an emphasis on educating the public about infection prevention practices and ways for them to stay safe. Now what will happen is individuals may take on those behaviors similarly to what happens in healthcare, and then those behaviors start to fall to the wayside because you don't have any kind of surveillance, any sort of monitoring, any sort of re-education strategies that are going to make sure that people are well educated. I also concern myself in regards to if a task force is hired next time to where we know that our stockpile of government personal protective equipment is going to be at the subpar at the end of every administration that comes through, or are we going to start back from zero again? So there are so many things that we can learn from this, but unfortunately, my issue that I have is that just to ignore it and act as if it's just going to go away and people haven't died and it's going to be endemic and we're going to have, let's say, $200,000 to $300,000 deaths, I think it's unethical, and I think that it is not the best strategy because we're not talking about ways for which people could stay safe. We're still not addressing the fact that there are still immunocompromised individuals. We're still not addressing the fact that, there are still disparities in minority communities where people are not getting adequate health care. People are being discriminated against because they are not vaccinated. There are barriers to vaccinations. And so there are so many things that we need to think about in regards to what are the unintended consequences and what populations are getting ready to settle more. And I cannot leave out my Hispanic sisters and brothers as well, because some of their rates in some of these categories were even worse than ours. So my concern is yes, this is the same exact problem that we had early on and where things were unequitable, meaning that when these guidelines and stuff came about, they were not equitable for us. And guess what? More people died in these communities. Now they're rolling back the guidelines. Who do you think is getting ready to suffer again? So again, this is not being done in an equitable manner. It does upset me because we're not showing people how to live with COVID. We're just acting as if it's going to go away.
I've got about 30 seconds, Dr. Deborah Holden. We're in an election season, and healthcare is still at issue, even though it seems like we don't really want it to be. Where do we go from here? 30 seconds.
I think it's pretty clear. They learned a lot, I think, during COVID, and then we got a lot of things that we already knew reinforced for us. Like Pastor Tisha says, COVID wasn't the problem. COVID was the snitch, right? COVID was the flashlight. Somebody else I was on the call called it the great revealer. It revealed a lot and made it inescapable for us. So people who were able to previously look away or pretend or ignore, you couldn't look away during COVID. You couldn't ignore it during COVID. And so I think as we think about and try to, support people. We've given them all of the individual kind of level, coaching and recommendations for what they can do to really take the reins of their own health. And there's power in their vote. So people think about who they want to represent them and reflect them in state houses and in their, city hall and Congress and all of that. These issues around making sure that people have universal access.
Absolutely.
And I'll say universal healthcare is really about universal, fair, equitable, affordable access to high quality healthcare.
Absolutely.
That's a right, not a privilege.
Well, we have to shift the conversation, which is why part of the reason you're here. But we have to shift the conversation so that healthcare, equal access to equal high quality healthcare, is a right, not a privilege, as it is today. Coming up, let's talk about Ukraine on the Santita Jackson Show. Back in just a minute. We hear India in the background. You know we love that. You need to bring that baby closer to the phone.
Oh my God. She's really having a good old time in India.
You need to bring her to the phone so everybody can hear her and she can say hello to everybody. Now.
Oh my God. As her mom grabs her and stops her down next to me.
And Stanley's praying for you. He said the spirit of cuss. You can't pay any attention. We love Stanley. Is this India?
Yes, but now she's not talking, but you want to say hi.
Hi, Precious. David Gibbs through. Okay, well, everybody's sending her love because, we hear her in the background. Everybody, people want to see that. She's our baby, right?
Yeah.
Hi, India. Ooh. Well, we've got Dr. David Gibbs here from the University of Arizona, history professor who's talking to us about Ukraine today. And so he's a pretty cool customer. I'm going to get Malcolm Nance back on because he's connected me to someone else who I'm going to have on too, a reporter, a journalist who is in Ukraine. So I'm really looking forward to having everybody on to talk about this particular issue. Is that India?
Hello?
Hi, Dr. Gibbs?
Yeah,
Oh, Dr. Gibbs, this is Dr. Deborah Verholzen. She's one of the world's esteemed epidemiologists, and she just became a grandmother. And so we have all adopted her grandbaby. She belongs to all of us now. So Angela's saying hello, India. Everybody's saying hello, India. Barbara. That's right. You can't put her off to the side.
Yesterday, she turned 6 months old yesterday.
Are you serious?
Oh, very nice. Very wonderful thing.
It's been 6 months. Okay. All right.
Does she want grandma all to herself?
It's crazy because it feels like it's been longer.
Oh my goodness! But that's because we heard about the pregnancy, and we were excited about that. Like, when's the baby gonna get here? I mean, we wanted to know when the baby was gonna get here. She was a zygote. I mean, she's got to hurry up and get here. Like, hurry! Oh boy, this is what a joy! What a joy! What did my dad say? You fight about the babies before they get here, and then you fight over them once they arrive. Oh my goodness. What a blessing. What a blessing she is. And she looks just like Dr. Verholden, who looks just like her mom, her daughter. So when you see this picture that you all have seen of the three generations, it's just, and wait a minute, D-Ray said India is ready to eat probably.
Santita, Dr. Dad said they look like me.
Oh, ow.
10 seconds, everyone.
Okay, stand by, everybody. Well, here you're going to learn something about what's happening over in Ukraine. Because this is...
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. 9278. Let's talk about Ukraine. Let's talk about NATO. Let's talk about the United States. Let's talk about the talks that Russia and Ukraine are starting today. That's what we're hearing. But the fighting has begun. There have been casualties. Hundreds of people have died. At least those are the official numbers from the Ukrainian government. And it's a perilous moment, everybody. Indeed, President Putin has ordered his military to put Russia's nuclear deterrence forces on high alert. What does that mean? What does that mean? And where are we now with all of this? Some people are saying that, President Putin is flexing his muscle and he is looking to start a nuclear war. But is that true? Is this the whole story? Is this the whole story? I think we need to continue to peel away the layers, everybody. This is the way that this is the only way that we're going to get out of this. We have to look at the history. We have to listen to people like Ralph Nader, who on ordinary days we trust. He said nobody wins in this conflict over Ukraine. He said when two scorpions are in a battle, they both lose. Welcome back to the show, Dr. David Gibbs from the University of Arizona. Give us this history. Where are we in this moment? Because it just seems like we're continuing to escalate. It doesn't seem like there's been any breakthrough. I know it hasn't been long, but it doesn't seem like it's getting any better.
No, it's definitely not getting any better. Obviously the Russian invasion is continuing with terrible consequences, totally unjustified by any reasonable standard. It's obviously not, the only admissible standard for invading a country is if they're imminently going to invade you first. Self-defense, and this obviously isn't imminent self-defense, so it's not acceptable. And on the other hand, and there's suffering going on. There's no question about it. Real suffering going on in Ukraine, and we have to note that. On the other hand, there's also a lot of dangerous talk in the West. Initially, I think the United States was engaging in a very cynical game of trying to kind of hint to the Ukrainians that they should not make any concessions to the Russians, like, guaranteeing they would never join NATO. And that the U.S., again, this was very strongly hinted, I think, would bail them out. They'd come to the rescue. When the U.S. had no intention of coming to the rescue, and now we're now seeing the effects of it. So I think the U.S. is embarrassed, and now there's talk of maybe military action. There's been high-level discussion of possibly U.S. implementing regime change in Moscow, or a no-fly zone where U.S. planes would sort of bar Russian planes from flying over Ukraine, leading to dogfights, probably with Russian planes. I think mostly what we're seeing is talk of U.S. not just arming Ukraine, but there's a lot of reports that the CIA already has a plan to facilitate and arm a Ukrainian insurgency if Kiev falls, as it probably will. And that, you'd have Ukrainian guerrilla fighters fighting against the Russian occupation force with U.S. support and U.S. arms, modeled on the 1980s in Afghanistan, where you had a Soviet occupation and U.S. arming Mujahideen guerrillas who later morphed into the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. And so I think we're seeing, this is extremely dangerous. And I think that one of the reasons, one of the effects we've just seen, Russia put its nuclear forces on higher alert. And I think this is in response to, the danger of military confrontation with the United States. And I think we should all be extremely frightened of the possibilities that are emerging here. I certainly am very frightened by it. And I think it's unfortunate because all of this could have been avoided if the U.S. had simply not expanded NATO, or at the very least given a written guarantee that NATO would not accept Ukraine as a member. That was the demand being given, and that should have been given. That would probably prevented all of this from happening. And it's very tragic that course of action, that simple, easy course of action, was not taken.
We know Kota Ibushi is online with us today, and I'm so glad that Kota offers up Kota's opinions, because they're very real out here. Kota says, we all know the role that other countries have played on the world stage, but being the person who says, but what about that time America did this, is so facile that it's absurd. Kota continues, also the constant blaming of NATO is silly. No country, including Russia or America or anyone else, can determine the choices a sovereign third party makes in their alliances. Russia can't tell anyone. What do you say about that?
Well, the second point is simply not true. NATO can choose to admit and not admit countries. They completely have that authority. They're not required to admit countries just because they want to join. So I hear that again and again from U.S. officials, and that's just not true. And they know it's not true. And I think that, again, the key issue here is how, well, in the first place, we have to know the history. This is all very reminiscent, by the way, of the War on Terror. I and also you, Santita, are certainly old enough, both of us, to remember the War on Terror. Mm-hmm. And, after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, there were people, including myself, who were saying we have to know the history here, how the United States intervention caused the rise of al-Qaeda, how it led to these attacks. And just like now, people are saying we don't want to know the history. All you need to know is they attacked us, and we have a right to attack them. And, people who brought up the history were vilified. You're not supposed to be saying those things. Well, that didn't go so well. It didn't go so well. We just saw the effects when the U.S. evacuated Kabul a few months ago. And this is going to go even worse. And so we do need to talk openly. We do need to have the history. And we also, yes, need to how America's failures led to where we are right now. In terms of, Russia vetoing Ukraine's membership in NATO, well, again, the comparable situation is how would the United States feel if Russia were to establish an alliance with the possibility of bases on a border with Mexico. And everybody knows the U.S. would never accept that, would never allow it. And, that parallel has to be taken into account here in understanding how Russia feels about the situation.
Why do you think it's important for us to know the history? And I want you all to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Kota, you're writing a lot on this chat line. Call in. We want to hear your voice. And this is not Bryce Green we're talking to. We're talking to Dr. David Gibbs, because you're addressing Bryce Green, and we'll have him back, and we will have other voices back. But I think it's important for us to hear Dr. Gibbs and Dr. Green and Medea Benjamin and John Nichols and Kevin Gray and voices of peace and context, because we're not hearing them anyplace else. I think it's a shame that we're not hearing Dr. Gibbs, who is a cool customer. He is not emoting and driving people crazy. He is just giving you the facts. That's what academics do. 2 + 2 = 4. That's it. Not 4.1, not 3.94. And so what he is trying to do is give us some information that we're not able to get in the corporate media. And I think that you ought to be more concerned about that. Most concerned about that. And so, Kota, please call in. Because you're doing a lot of responding. But remember, you're talking to Dr. Gibbs, not Bryce Green. Why is it important for us to know history? Why do you keep referencing that? Because you have gotten some pushback from some people who say, I don't want to hear all of that. This is where we are right now. In fact, we were on Reverend Jackson's show yesterday with Malcolm Nance, and I can't wait to have Malcolm back and maybe have all of you on one day. He said, look, I hear the history. I understand it. Yeah, that's established. But I deal in real politics. And in real time, these things are happening on the ground. Boom. And this is what I've got to do. So why is it important to you? 2 + 2, you said, Philip, is somewhere between 3 and 5. No, 2.0 plus 2.0 is 4.0. That's it. So talk to me. Why is it important to you that we have these, that we have history? Do we really need context?
Well, you do. In terms of the question is, how come Russia is an enemy state of us right now? How did that happen? And, so you have to find out how it happened. The fact is, in the 1990s, especially in the early 1990s, Russia was extremely friendly to the United States. The government was extremely friendly towards the United States. It wasn't threatening anybody throughout the 90s. I should add, at least in the early 90s, initially, the Russian people were extremely optimistic about the United States and saw the U.S. as not just a friend, but as almost a model for what Russia should become. Mm-hmm. there were, again, I've mentioned this before, but I'll say it again. There were top foreign policy figures, some of the most distinguished in history, like George Kennan, who were saying that Russia's not threatening anybody right now. And, but American policy began treating them like an enemy. And obviously, if you treat someone like an enemy, well, of course you'll turn them into an enemy. I think, there was a tendency to look at the Russian people with contempt and treat them with contempt. And again, it shouldn't come as a surprise that they didn't appreciate that. It wasn't just an attitude, but policies that came out of that attitude. And in particular, there was the expansion of NATO in direct violation of the U.S. agreement not to expand NATO and to continue expanding NATO all the way to Russia's borders, every single time, in violation of an agreement the U.S. had made with Russia not to do so. There was extensive U.S. intervention in the Russian elections, in which not only did the U.S. intervene in Russia's elections, American officials boasted about it. It was on the cover of Time magazine. And again, the Russians viewed that very dimly and very negatively, and I think that turned them into, an American enemy. And again, people shouldn't think of this as just Putin. I honestly don't know what the Russian people are thinking about the war. I just don't have information on that. Generally speaking, Putin has been very popular, actually exceptionally popular. And one of the most popular things about him is he's seen as standing up for the Russian national interest and Russian dignity against an American enemy that seems determined to humiliate Russia. And so I think really it was just a foolhardy activity for the U.S. to be antagonizing Russia like this and turning them into an enemy. I think part of this is at the end of the Cold War, many American officials really missed the Cold War and said so. Colin Powell was interviewed in 1990 by an army, I think it was Stars and Stripes. This is almost a direct quote. He said, "Think hard about it. I'm running out of demons. I'm running out of villains." If you're a general, I guess that's a real problem if you're running out of villains, because you won't have a job anymore. There won't be any justification for the military if we have peace. And he was saying, we're facing a prospect of no real enemies, and isn't that a problem? Well, I guess we solved the problem. Now we have a real enemy, one with nuclear weapons too. I think that's extremely bad for the whole world, though, including the American people.
Call me at 773-763-9278. Steve from the Gold Coast. Steve, what's on your mind? Wonderful hearing your voice. Do we have Steve there?
Steve, can you hear us?
Yes, hello?
Hey, Steve, what's on your mind?
Yes, I want to make a couple of points. I agree, 2 + 2 is 4, but there are people who believe that 1 + 3 is 4 as well. There are different perspectives. And though I agree that there was a agreement between the United States and what was in the Soviet Union / Russia, that NATO would not expand, the question is, does the United States unilaterally have a right to make enter into such an agreement on behalf of states like Ukraine? Do we have a right to say, oh, by the way, we've made an agreement that you're not going to be allowed to join going forward? And many would argue that this is exactly the kind of thing that would have necessitated states like Ukraine joining. And keep in mind, in the 1990s, the Russian people at the time were very supportive of the Serbian efforts and much of the genocide that was going on in the Balkans, and resented of American involvement to end that conflict. So this idea that we were just buddies through the 90s, no. In fact, long before this, they bemoaned the loss of empire. Vladimir Putin's experience in terms of how he came to power mirrors of many totalitarian regimes in the past. He utilized the democratic institutions to become what he is today, and then made sure, in the same way that Adolf Hitler came to power, that no one would then supplant him. And again, I think that this is somebody who thinks that just because there are Russian people in what is Ukraine, that therefore, in the same way that Adolf Hitler thought, well, any place where there are German people is Germany, and that this is therefore is Russia. And I understand that there are complexities here, but the way your guest is framing this, I'm sorry, it's just one-sided.
Well, he's still here, so let him engage you. Dr. Gibbs, this is Steve from the Gold Coast.
I think what we're seeing here, again, is a rerun of the War on Terror. And the War on Terror also, Osama bin Laden, Saddam Hussein, they were Adolf Hitler. And we have to treat them like Adolf Hitler. It's 1939 again. This is exactly the same rhetoric. It's just being reused here. I think there's some degree of incorrect information here. NATO is entirely entitled to refuse membership in any country it wishes to do so.
The United States is not NATO.
Yeah, yes.
The United States runs NATO. There's no question.
Yes, we do.
Or U.S. The United States is the most dominant element in NATO. They do not run NATO, sir.
But you said the United States is not NATO, but the United States is NATO. And when you go to Brussels, you see it.
No, the United States is not NATO.
Yes, I mean, we run it. We have the heaviest. Steve, we have the heaviest hand in NATO. But, we can leave that out there. But we have the heaviest hand in NATO. That is why the pressure has come from the United States lately for NATO to begin to put more money in it, because we're the ones who put the most money in it. We are NATO. It's the American footprint. Hold on. It's the American footprint on Europe. It is. So, I mean, if it isn't,
it is. But we are not NATO. We are one member state. We are the dominant member state.
And you know what? And that is the point. And we are extremely dominant. We can check anybody on NATO. At least that has been the case up until now. But let him.
And the question is, do you have a right? Do we have a right, either as NATO or as the United States, to simply say, oh, by the way, going forward, you're going to be excluded from joining because of some agreement?
Absolutely, 100%, totally. That's explicit in the 1949 Charter.
Wait, but did you hear what he just, Steve? Did you hear what he just said? Have you read the NATO Charter?
I'm a doctor of political science. Yes,
I'm not.
The NATO Charter.
But I'm not attacked. Wait a minute. Calm down. Calm down. Put some ice in all these. No, but calm down.
Again, then NATO can make those decisions, not the United States. So stop saying that the United States.
Can I say something?
Please.
Since 1949, since the creation of NATO, the commander of NATO has always been a four-star U.S. general. You read the memoirs of everybody involved with NATO; they all agree the U.S. effectively has veto power over everything NATO does. The U.S. isn't just another member state or even a dominant member state. It gets to decide who joins NATO and who doesn't. There's no doubt about U.S. power over NATO. And, U.S. officials have been saying this forever, that, we can't say Ukraine can't join NATO. That's just not true. The U.S. can say it whenever it wants. The U.S. doesn't have to let Ukraine join NATO.
You can bully your way.
It's not even bullying.
Defending the same sort of thing. Yes, it is. It's bullying. You're saying that basically the United States, because of its power in NATO, can bully its way through that policy without any regard for the right and justification of that.
And that's what they've done.
I'm not just saying that they can, but they do every single time.
That's what we do.
Right. And in 1949, the United States has always run NATO. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows it.
It's wrong for the United States to enter into such an agreement.
Well, but they've done
it. Understand that point?
But Steve, that has been the function.
Right to enter into. There's no reason it can't enter into that agreement. I don't know what you mean by any of this, honestly.
Well, again, because NATO is an organization, that agreement was between the United States and Soviet Union / Russia, not between NATO. And by the way, nobody asked the Ukrainians, sir, whether they perhaps had a voice in this, whether they had any ambitions of joining NATO going forward. And do we have a right to say
this is misinformation you're giving here. This is just misinformation. The U.S. has every right to refuse membership in NATO. It doesn't have to admit Ukraine.
No, okay.
Steve, wait 1 moment. You get a chance to make one final statement in 30 seconds. Let's go.
You can have the right to do a lot of things. You can carpet bomb entire countries, but whether or not that right to do so, in terms of having the capacity and the military will and so forth, that's different than whether it's morally justified. Is it morally justified for the United States?
We're not talking about morals, Steve. But Steve, we're not talking about morals. You know what we're talking about? No. I'm not. No. Because I'm an anti-imperialist. I think that. I agree with President Eisenhower. He said that if NATO has not accomplished their mission in 10 years, they need to be dissolved. And he said that 70 years ago. That having been said, when you get to Brussels, when you get to Brussels, okay, you find out. No, you don't find it out when you read the charters and things like that, which I've done. And when you get to Brussels, you are very clear that this is an American construct, and they will tell you that. And I don't know why that's such a problem for you. I don't know why that is such a problem for you.
Well, I'm saying to you that the United States should not have that kind of power.
Well, I don't know, but
NATO,
we agree
and
on
not
that, Steve.
officially.
Steve, we agree on that. But what we're telling you is that the United States does have that kind of power, and that's a fact. Now we're going to go to Everett. How you doing, Everett?
Hello. I totally disagree with the previous speaker, but I want to start out with, I have a suggestion for Black Lives Matter, by which they could increase their power and influence. I would suggest that Black Lives Matter make an announcement that it supports the people of the Ukraine.
Why?
Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because it would show that they're not just totally focused on Black issues, and that they can demonstrate that they can become involved in this Ukrainian crisis.
Okay. All right. Well, let me ask you this. Thank you so much, Everett.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Everett, thank you so much for your thoughts. Thank you so much for your thoughts. I think that whenever you side with marginalized people and oppressed people anywhere, you have common cause with oppressed people and marginalized people everywhere. That has always been the point of at least my interpretation of the civil rights movement. The mission statement of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which is the organization that Dr. King and Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth and Reverend Abernathy and so many others founded, was to save the soul of America, not the white soul, not the black, not the brown, not the yellow, not the red, to save the soul of America. This has always been a spiritual quest. It's always been a spiritual quest. And Steve, I appreciate your passion and all that you're saying, but this is a moral issue for me too. America should not hold sway over everybody, but we do. That's just a fact. Them is the facts. And now the world has changed, Dr. Gibbs. I've got 2 minutes for you. The world has changed. Now China is in it, even though they abstained last week at the UN. We're hearing more and more reports that they really do side with Russia, in addition to sharing a border. Where are we going from here? And why do you think, there's, Steve was so passionate, and I don't want to read into what Steve was saying, Dr. Steve.
Right.
But, when people hear how America functions in the world, we become appalled. And we're like, we don't do that. I'm like, yeah, we do. Yeah, we do.
Well, I suppose that where we're going with this is a full-blown nuclear war. Unfortunately, we're not quite there yet, but we have a new Cold War, basically. It was very likely Russia and China on one side and the U.S. and NATO on the other. In some ways, much more dangerous and with higher stakes than the last Cold War. We were very lucky to survive the last Cold War, but we may not be so lucky this time. And I do wish, basically, there were more consideration given to the enormous risks that are being taken here in Ukraine and huge stakes for the world that are taking place here. I think there's a kind of frivolity to it when people are talking about military confrontation with Russia and a lack of perspective. And part of the problem, clearly, is the shutting down of discussion and debate, very much like we saw with the War on Terror, much more so than the War on Terror, I would say, where anybody who disagrees or dissents is automatically seen as working for the other side. During the War on Terror, they said you're working for Osama bin Laden or you're in league with him. Now it's you're in league with Putin. Well, that means you can't have open debate. You can't have discussion. And only the most extremist views will prevail. That is a recipe for not just Cold War, but potentially nuclear war. And I'm very worried about where this is going and how it might end up. And so I think if there's any way we could find any compromise at this point, it should be done. At the very least, we should absolutely rule out any military action in response because it's just too risky and too dangerous. and stick exclusively to diplomatic responses. And yes, condemnation of Russia. And yeah, I think it'd be a great idea for Black Lives Matter to announce, and for other organizations of all races to announce solidarity with the people of Ukraine and condemn the invasion, but also rule out military action in response. This has to be a peaceful response, not a military one.
War is not the answer. Only love can conquer hate. That's true.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and that's really it. And let's not shut down the debate in this country. You said you don't like that about President Putin. But you say he has no debate. He doesn't have an open society. We can't do that here. And we cannot attack people when we disagree with their perspective, even as they present facts. That's very dangerous. We've done it before. Have we not learned? Clearly not. We've got to learn, everybody. We've got to grow up in our politics. If we really believe in free speech and free thought, if we really believe in this idea and ideal called America, we got to do this differently. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show. Let's talk about Ketanji Brown Jackson, first Black woman nominated to be on the Supreme Court. Back in just a minute. Dr. Gibbs, thank you so much. But, whew, wow.
We just lost Dr. Gibbs.
Yeah, this is, whoa, everybody. Whoa. The founding documents, everybody, of NATO, functionally NATO has been run by the United States. That's just, them is the fact. And when you get to Brussels, you see it. Should it be? Okay, you can debate that. Well, if we allow each other to do that. But that has, the United States has always run NATO. That's just been it. So, and where do we go from here with all of that? We are edging closer and closer to a nuclear confrontation. And you're not going to bomb your way out of that. There will be nobody left. We're going to have to talk our way through this. And we're going to have to de-escalate and move toward nonviolence. That is the only way that we're going to survive. My father talked about mutual cooperation or mutual annihilation. That's where we are. That's it. Think about that, everybody. Think about it. Think about it. And let us stop trying to shut down the debate. It's politically immature and it's politically and culturally dangerous. Dangerous. You know, Kota, you were talking about Bryce Green and he was wrong. No, he was not. He went in his what the corporate media are shutting down.
Sending
about
Attorney Hoffler and Attorney Mathis through.
Thank you. The people I've brought to you have brought to you just facts that you cannot impeach. Not perspectives, facts. So let's deal with those so that we can get out of this mess. Because today we're closer to nuclear annihilation for the human race than we were yesterday. And we did not have to be here. We did not have to be here. And those of you who do a lot of talking online, I appreciate it, but call in. Call in so that we can hear your voices. You know, while my name is Santita, Charles, and while I'm talking, Putin invades, yeah, all of it's wrong. And you know what? I hope that we will grow to a place, Attorney Janice Mathis and Attorney C.K. Hoffler, where we will be as concerned about this happening on the African continent, on the Asian continent, on the other 6 continents. Everything that happens in Europe is a world crisis, but everything that happens elsewhere, North and South America, Central America, the Caribbean, Africa, Asia, well, that's just a neighborhood thing. You know, we have forests in Europe and jungles in the developing world. Come on, you guys, let's grow up. Let's grow up. And we're all in this because President Zelensky has asked that we all be part of a foreign legion and stop this madness in his country. Well, you know what? We got a lot of madness everywhere. How about coming up with nonviolence and respecting the sovereignty of all nations? And how about not conducting coups in nations like we did in Ukraine in 2014? We did that. So, Janice Mathis, how are you, Attorney Mathis?
I am doing just fine. Good morning. How are you?
Oh, you know, I'm online with Facebook and everybody else. And this is the president of the National Conference of Negro Women. I love National Council of Negro Women. I love it. I mean, some of the greatest leaders in our history founded by Mary McLeod Bethune. Oh boy, I remember my mother telling me about the National Council of Negro Women when I was a little girl. So when I saw, oh goodness, I can't believe I'm skipping like this. Oh, when I saw Dorothy Height, I always felt that she was like Mary McLeod Bethune's sister. Because my mother
that's not far off the mark.
No, you're right, but that's why I was like, oh, she knew Mary McLeod Bethune, and my grandmother, of course, being from Florida, saw Mary McLeod Bethune. I think Zora Neale Hurston taught in my grandma Gertrude's school. So all these.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. So all of these figures in history, I'm like a person away from them. It's really that sort of thing excites me. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, how you doing?
Good morning. Good morning, Santita. Good morning, Janice Mathis.
Good morning, my friend CK. How are you?
I'm great.
Good. I guess, Santita, that was the one good thing about segregated America in the South. We had to travel by car. And so going to Daytona to Bethune-Cookman and learning about Mary McLeod.
60 seconds.
No, keep on.
Was just part of what you had to do to get from Greenville down to Miami.
Well, you don't know. This is my mother's mother. They're from Florida. Miss Gertrude. Oh, yeah.
I was talking about Joseph Mathis's mother lived in Fort
Oh,
Myers.
she did? Well, that's where my grandmother was from. Grandma Gertrude.
I did not know that.
She was from Fort Myers.
We spent almost every Christmas in Fort Myers.
Oh, wow. My mother was born in Fort Pierce, but my grandmother was from Fort Myers.
Yeah. Yeah, that was, and wow. You learned the history that way. You sort of absorbed it.
Oh, I mean, and they were all right there. They were all right there. They were all right there.
10 seconds.
Thank you so much. Thank you for. I'm gonna have to tell I'm gonna tell Mom that. She's gonna be really excited to know that. Oh wow.
Change the world. Can change the world. We can change the world. Change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Ooh, got things started off just right this morning as we're talking about Ukraine and NATO and Russia and the United States and Putin and nuclear war and peace and peace and peace and peace, everybody. If you want to hear the podcast of the show, that is the show without commercials. Oh, excuse me, go to WCPT820.com/Santita. At the end of the show, it'll be right there. It is Monday, February 28th. 2022. I'm Santita Jackson coming to you from the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. We used to be Air America, but today we're WCPT. And so glad to be serving you. I am also at AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. And I want you to meet me on my YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show channel. That's right. Meet Michael Ann and everybody else over there. Please get on over there, everybody. And on my official page on Facebook, the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Not Santita Jackson, but Santita Jackson and Friends. Let's talk about Ketanji Brown Jackson. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. Who is she? First Black woman nominated to be on the Supreme Court. Public defender. We've never had that before. Who is she? Why is this so significant? And then what can she bring to the bench? So let's talk about this, everybody, on the Santita Jackson Show at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. I want to hear your thoughts today. Let's get through some of these headlines so we can get right to it. Chicago, we're going to have a high of 48 degrees above zero, everybody. Partly cloudy, beautiful day. And in Minneapolis, St. Paul, beautiful day, 39 degrees above zero, everybody. Partly cloudy. In the NBA, the Timberwolves will be playing the Cavaliers tonight, and the Bulls will be facing off against the Heat. In the NHL, well, Chicago was shut out by the Blues. The Blues for Chicago, nothing. And so, everybody, what's going on in Ukraine? Well, maybe there's a glimmer of hope. The Russian and Ukrainian delegations are meeting for talks today at the Ukraine-Belarus border as Moscow continues to ramp up its assault on Kiev. New satellite imagery shows a miles-long convoy of Russian military vehicles bearing down on the Ukrainian capital despite the negotiations. The Environmental Protection Agency faces a Supreme Court case today that could challenge the federal government's ability to fight the climate crisis and prevent its worst outcomes. Republicans are expected to argue that the EPA has no authority to regulate emissions over the power sector. Instead, they say that authority rests with Congress. We'll see what the Supreme Court has to say about that. Coronavirus, everybody. People who have received a dose of Evusheld, the monoclonal antibody drug treatment against COVID-19, should get an additional dose as soon as possible, according to the FDA. The agency revised the emergency use authorization because the drug may be less active against certain Omicron subvariants. Monoclonal antibody treatments serve as a different avenue for protection and are popular among immunocompromised people. So we will see how this all works, everybody. And will the State of the Union address help to lift President Biden's poll numbers? According to the Washington Post and ABC News, his poll numbers continue to plummet. What is going on, everybody? Well, he does have a pandemic that's become endemic. He does have inflation. He does have a war now, and there's just been a lot going on, but his approval rating is now at 37%. Take note of the fact that President Donald Trump's approval rating at one point was 38.6%. He's having a tough time of that tomorrow, just before he has his State of the Union address. I've got two of my favorite people with me today. Of course, you know Attorney C.K. Hoffler, chair of the board of Rainbow Push, immediate past president of the National Bar Association, the largest and oldest black bar association in the world. And of course, she has legal Q&A with C.K. on the Santita Jackson Show on Wednesdays. And she has her own show on WAOK, the iconic Atlanta talk radio station, every Tuesday at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. But there's a woman who, well, we go back several generations. In fact, her father was always one of my father's inspiration for success, was a father figure to my father, Coach Mathis. Coach Mathis, my father, becomes tearful when he speaks about him now. A great husband, great father, an Omega man, a mighty man of Omega Psi Phi. But he was his high school football coach, and he saw in him something and stayed on him and pushed him toward what he saw was greatness, and we'll always be grateful for that. But he did that with his own children. He's got, it's something in the blood in the Mathis family, and now his daughter is the president of the National Council of Negro Women, this vaunted organization led by Janetta Cole and, of course, famously by Dorothy Height, but founded by Mary McLeod Bethune. Indeed, they harness the energy of African-American women all over the country. And I am so proud to have Attorney Janice Mathis, the former head of Operation Push and Rainbow Push, with us today. Let me start with you, Attorney Janice Mathis, because you lobbied really hard, along with other black women leaders, to have President Biden come through on this campaign promise to have an African-American woman go to the Supreme Court. Why was it important for him to come through on that promise? Why is it important to have a black woman on the court, and particularly this woman, the first time we will have a public defender on the court? Janice Mathis, Attorney Janice Mathis, excuse me.
Well, don't worry about the title. Good morning to your audience, and thank you for those very kind words about Joseph Mathis. I appreciate that. I must make one small correction. He was an alpha.
Oh,
like
excuse
Dr.
me.
King.
Oh, excuse me.
In addition to being an athlete, he considered himself sort of an intellectual. But at any rate, why is it important? I'm drawn to something that the very first woman to serve on the Supreme Court said, Sandra Day O'Connor. And I wouldn't ordinarily, quote Sandra Day O'Connor, but she said something in one of her opinions. I think it was, CK will know, the Michigan Supreme Court opinion about affirmative action. She said, if we're going to have legitimate leaders that society considers to be legitimate, the path to leadership must be visibly open to talented individuals of every race and ethnicity. That's why it's important. We're opening up another path to leadership, to visibility, so that little girls like Ketanji was 40 years ago can look and see, oh, I can be on the Supreme Court. That path to leadership is open to me. You're removing another barrier. People say, well, she won't change the philosophical balance of the court. Be that as it may, we shall see. but it knocks down another one of those barriers. And you know, the United States has been late coming to the party, not just with black nominees and black public officials, but with women. Maggie Thatcher was Prime Minister of Great Britain 40 years ago. Indira Gandhi before that. But the United States has been slow to recognize the talent of women in leadership.
Very, very, very
Those are
slow.
just two, very slow, very slow. The rest of, you know, the so-called undeveloped world, the so-called third world, has been much more open to women's leadership. And that's one of the reasons we have so much war in this world now, is because we don't have that mediating influence of women's leadership, I think. So it's important.
What about her being a public defender? Why is that important? I mean, as we look at who she is and her record, and why is that important? A public defender. What is a public defender, and what is that first and foremost?
She was a federal public defender, so people accused of federal crimes who cannot afford to have to pay for counsel or assign counsel. So they go into court to make the best defense possible for those who are accused of criminal behavior. It's just that simple. And what does it do? It gives you a certain empathy and understanding. If all you've ever done is prosecute, and we need good prosecutors. Davita, my sister, was the first black woman prosecutor in South Carolina. But if you do only that perspective, you tend to think everybody's guilty. Prosecutors win about 90% of their cases. The rules of court are stacked in favor of the prosecution. There are many structural reasons why prosecution gives you a sort of narrow view of the world. When you represent defendants, they come in all stripes, sizes, and shapes. And you learn to empathize, if not sympathize, with what they have been through in many instances. 80% of prisoners have some drug or some drug or alcohol behavior in their background that influences what they have done. Not that you excuse the behavior, but you understand how that contributes to how people's lives play out. So it's important.
You know,
the other thing that's important, she's got an uncle who's incarcerated. And so just imagine, you're on the Supreme Court and you got an uncle who is in prison himself.
And she mentioned him favorably.
Balance you.
And she mentioned him favorably as she accepted the nomination.
Like a badge of honor.
Yes. Why do you think that's important?
I think she wants people to know that they're still human beings. I mean, remember, in some states, we still won't let people vote when they have finished serving their time. It becomes a lifetime sentence rather than punishment for crime. The incarceration itself is the punishment. But we add on, you can't get a job, you can't get a professional license, you can't operate an automobile. We add on extra punishment, and we abandon the idea of rehabilitation, which used to be a part of criminal procedure.
We're talking with Attorney Janice Mathis. She is the head of the National Council of Negro Women. This is probably our most prestigious Black women's organization in our history, founded by Mary McLeod Bethune, headed by Dr. Janetta Cole, the former president of Spelman College. And of course, who can ever forget Dorothy Height? Really one of the leading lights in all of our lives. And so many women. And now, the brilliant Attorney Janice Mathis. What does a Black woman bring to this, Attorney Mathis? I mean, when you think of Mary McLeod Bethune, when you think of Dr. Janetta Cole, when you think of Dorothy Height, when you think of your mother, my mother, when you think of CK's mom, when you think of our grandmothers, what? Because she said she didn't understand Clarence Thomas. She said, "I just don't understand you. I really don't get you." What is she? What does a Black woman's perspective bring to the court?
She brings her lived experience. We've talked about some of it. Part of her lived experience was similar to my own. She was part of a high school class that was less than 20% Black, yet she was the president of that class. She learned early on that her intellect her willingness to work could help her overcome whatever prejudice there was against her color. That's important. She brings a lived experience that expresses that I can be judged based on my qualifications if I persevere. Now, it takes a very special environment to do that. And it reminds me of something your dad says all the time about public education. He said all schools should be choice because all children should be chosen. Katanja got to go to a very, it was a public school, but in an exclusive neighborhood where taxes were able to buy the best education that could be had. She brings the experience of knowing how she was advantaged by that. That's important to know that, but for the grace of God, she might have been in a less high-performing school where Jeff Bezos was not one of the graduates of her school.
Attorney
We still use an agrarian formula to fund public education based on property tax in the neighborhood. How many Katanja Jacksons have we lost or missed because we didn't develop their gifts at a young age? That's what she brings to the court. She understands that history.
Amen. And Mae Jemisin's. I mean, we've missed so much genius because we feel that everybody doesn't count. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, you, along with Attorney Janice Mathis and other Black women who are in leadership, advocated aggressively for a Black woman on the court. And indeed, in your capacity as president of the National Bar Association, you vetted these potential nominees. What did you find out about Ketanji Brown Jackson?
Well, Santita, first of all, I'd like to echo really all that Janice Mathis has said about her. But what I found out about her that was particularly interesting was that she had an extraordinary judicial temperament. In addition to all of the positive things in her background that will enable her to sit on the court, and I think she's going to be a game changer. I don't care what the composition of the court is. I think she's going to be a game changer because she has the leadership and the capacity to reach out and speak. She will have the ability to reach out and speak to her fellow justices of the Supreme Court in a compelling way. You're not going to change someone overnight, but every single justice on that court, perhaps with the exception of, ironically, Justice Clarence Thomas, has been able to modify slightly, we don't know the recent two, but modify slightly their positions over time because they've had discussions with their colleagues, thought through the issues. And that's what it is to be on the highest court of this land. There's not the court has become very, very politicized at this point, where we're basically divided according to party lines, which it never should be. But someone like Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson has the ability to bridge the gap, to stand in the cut, to bring a new energy to the court that does not exist now, and frankly, hasn't really existed since Justice the late Thurgood Marshall was on the court. There have been other justices that came after, or they were there during Thurgood Marshall and before, that certainly were magnificent, but none bring the flavor that she brings since Justice Thurgood Marshall. So what I learned about her is that she's going to personify what we know is the experience of not just Black women, not just women, not just people of color, but someone who has compassion and passion, empathy, but she's going to be that great jurist because she has the judicial temperament. And you put all of that together, and so you have someone who is needed on the court at this time because there are going to be so many issues that pertain to fundamental equality, justice, discrimination, immigration that are going to come before the Supreme Court in the short term. And we need a voice. We need someone who brings a perspective to try to balance things out. Rome wasn't built overnight, but she's going to make a big difference in the short term, midterm, and long term. And certainly that is one of the things when I thought through when we're vetting and talking about various candidates, I think that was one of the things about her that I felt strongest about. So this is a game changer. She is a game changer. And it could not make me more proud because finally the world will see what it looks like to have exceptional Black women who can run circles around people which has always been the case in my humble impression, who can stand toe to toe and fight for justice and do what they have to do in their capacity as someone sitting on the U.S. Supreme Court, finally.
Let me go to you, Mama D. Mama D, what's on your mind today?
Well, hallelujah, greetings. This exciting subject is on my mind. She's a Negro black. She's not a people of color or black or brown or refugee or immigrant. She's a Negro black.
Why is that important to you?
Negro black, and that's important to me, even though Clarence Thomas is a Negro black too, but I believe he was appointed by a Republican president, so he was coming from a conservative view from Jump Street. He's married to a white woman. She's married to a white man. And so we are all, that's what's different about Negro blacks. We all have slave owner taint in our bloodline, including myself. So I think that this is what we will finally get to see, what a Christian, brilliant attorney. I mean, she said it all in that speech. Every single she hit all the buttons. She checked all the boxes, and she blew it out of the field. It's just, in conclusion, it's just unfortunate to me that Barack Obama, who nominated three Supreme Court justices, a white woman, he added another one, made history, adding a Latina woman, and then went back and nominated a white man. Just to think what an honor, what a feather in his cap this could have been if he had not, when he was asked, why did you nominate a white woman? This was what he said. And I didn't believe it when I first heard it by Michael Eric Dyson, who said it from the rostrum of Rainbow Push. He said, quote, because I could not find a black lesbian from Skokie, unquote. And so that's unfortunate that he doesn't have the opportunity to add this to his credit. I think it would have been a wonderful thing. What do you think?
Well, I certainly think it's high time that we have a black woman on the Supreme Court. It's way overdue. When I think of Constance Baker Motley, there are so many brilliant. I think of Pauli Murray. I think of so many brilliant women who would have added. I mean, first of all, I think the Supreme Court should be bigger. Okay, let me start there. And I think you need more voices. I think you need more discussions. I think you need more discussions and dissent. Janice Mathis. Janice, I have about 90 seconds left for you as I think of the last will and testament of Mary McLeod Bethune, the founder of your great organization. She said, among other things, I leave you respect for the uses of power. What about Ketanji Brown Jackson and the uses of power?
Clearly, she has respect for the uses of power, and she's acquired expertise in using those levers, not just for herself and her own career, but for others. I think about her stint on the U.S. Sentencing Commission, where she did yeoman work to help ease the crack powder disparity in sentencing. This is a great pick, and don't be dismayed when you hear right-wingers coming after her. It has already started. Her background is stellar, but that's not going to stop them from trying to pick her apart. I urge all your listeners, be in touch with your senators of every party, your United States senators, whether they're on Judiciary Committee or not. Call them and let them know you support this nomination. I think Biden's drop in the polls has something to do with his courageous pick of a Supreme Court nominee. Let's back her up and make sure that her path to the court is smooth and unfettered.
What
and
can
I
we
thank
do?
you, Santita, for this time.
Oh, you got to
Call
come
the
back.
United States Senate.
Okay.
I got to come back.
Yeah, you got to come back when you have time. You know, you're the head of the National Council of Negro
Anytime.
Women, so I don't know when I can get you, but I'm glad I was able to get you this time.
Anytime. It's a pleasure.
Oh, well, I send you so much
It's a
love.
pleasure.
Sending you much love, and no one's thinking about Tucker Carlson. Bless his heart. Bless his heart. It's a big world, Tucker.
grow up, honey.
And did you see the article they're criticizing dark money in support of Ketanji?
Yes.
The same folk who would not vote for the Freedom to Vote Act or the John Lewis Voting Rights Restoration Act that would have limited the power of dark money in politics have the nerve to complain about its use. It's rich.
It is real
Richly
rich.
ironic.
It is real rich, but that's all right. We're still going to push her on to that Supreme Court.
And one other thing you said about, I thought about the Cameroon. Do you know Doctors Without Borders had some folk kidnapped last week? And you hardly hear a murmur about it in the press. If that had been any place in Europe, oh my goodness, we'd be up in arms. We'd be trying to negotiate.
You understand what I'm saying? Will you come back and talk about
I
that?
understand clearly.
Can you come back and
I
talk about
will.
that this week? I mean, because really, whenever something
will.
happens in Europe, it's a world crisis. But when it happens on the other six continents,
afterthought.
you know.
Well, that's the Boko Haram.
No,
Yes,
forests
we need
and
to talk about
jungles.
that.
You know what I'm talking
One of
about.
the many things that Bethune did was she was
I got 10
at the first day of the UN
Okay.
in 1945. I love you.
I love
Okay,
you.
love you, girl.
We're continuing this discussion. Call us at 773-763-9278. Back in just a minute. Is she still there? Janice?
No, she dropped. You only have attorney CK.
Okay, CK, I want you to set the table for us in this upcoming segment, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Sure.
All right. Whew. Wow. Yeah, I mean, in Europe you have forests, Sherwood Forest. But in the rest of the world you got jungles. I am not mad. I'm just saying, my father came by, I didn't come up with that one. But it's like, I'm like, a world war is a European war. I'm like, look, everybody, war is awful wherever you go. And what's happened in Ukraine is awful. But we see people and their borders breached all the time, and we don't get upset about it. We should get upset about it everywhere. Indeed, the Kenyan ambassador, Attorney Hoffler, said, look, as Kenyans, we are product of artificially constructed borders. We're the product of colonialism. So our colonial powers came in and just sliced us up, really to keep people divided on their way out of India. Right. On their way out of India, after the Indian people had kicked out the British, on their way out, they carved off Pakistan and Sri Lanka. Same people, but to keep them warring with each other and to keep them under British control, under colonial control. That's what they do, under European control. That has got to stop. And you need to just peep game and understand what this is. Yeah, I said peep game, and I mean it. Because that's what it is. Yeah, you there, CK?
Yes, I'm here, Santita.
Okay, very good. Oh, yes. Boy. Okay, so everybody call us.
I mean, if we're going to talk about Africa, I mean, Africa is
all right, sending Attorney Jones, Attorney Connolly, and Chaparral through.
Divided, communities divided, just for financial or economic reasons. So, and there are breaches every day, and like you said, in many countries, and there's never a discussion about it. Nobody's ever really talking about it. No one really cares. So
we have to care.
But we have to care, because I'll tell you how we really gonna care. When our sons and daughters are being deployed over there, we're going to care.
And that's why I'm saying,
I don't know. I think
you need to know about the background. If we don't know all that went into what all that makes this crisis, I mean, all of it. We're going to continue to create these crises.
All right, we're going 11:30, everyone.
Attorney Jones? Hello. Hey. Attorney Jones, Daryl?
How you doing? Yes, good morning.
Great, honey.
Good morning.
Aaron?
Good morning.
Erin is driving her family, but we still have to get her. Thank you.
I am.
I told her family, but she said, "Can you still get her?" So here you are. Thank you. Stand by.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can Change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, let's change the world. Let's save the world today. Let's pray for Ukraine and Russia and the United States and all of the continents, everybody in the subcontinents. Pray for everybody today. We really need peace and justice. Not quiet, peace and justice. I'm Santita Jackson, coming to you from WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want you to meet me on my YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, and on my Facebook page, the official page, which is Santita Jackson and Friends. Everybody, please get on over there. I want to talk to you about this incredible choice for the Supreme Court Justice seat that is now vacant. Indeed, for the first time in our history, a black woman has been nominated. For the first time in our history, a public defender has been nominated. And so we want to hear your thoughts. 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Before we get back into this conversation, we have got Chapearl Wells. She has got a gala honoring her son. She has a foundation. She and her husband have turned their pain into power, and they're honoring the works that Courtney Copeland did while he was living his short, bountiful life on this earth. Where and when is this big event, Chapearl?
Good morning, Santita, and thank you so much. It is going to be March 5th at the Experimental Station, 6100 Blackstone in Chicago. You can get your tickets on eventbrite.com, keyword Courtney Copeland Memorial Foundation, or you can actually make a donation if you can't attend the function. We are asking everyone to please purchase a ticket for a mother who has lost a child. And we are honoring my son, Courtney Copeland. Santita, I must say that, I have received an outpouring of love from all of your listeners, and all of our morning crew, our morning stars have come through big time, from Meddy to Bab to Hannah to Nina to Marnie. All of the morning stars have contributed something or purchased a ticket for a mother who has lost a child, and I am so appreciative of the love, and it brings tears to my eyes to know that so many people want to see this foundation succeed. And so we're asking everyone to come out and support us or support us virtually. You can also make a donation to www.copelandmemorial.com. And we look forward to seeing everyone on March 5th. Thank you so much, Santita.
Amen, amen, amen. Let's get into Ketanji Brown Jackson, the first black woman, the first public defender. Prosecutors, they work with the police, put the criminals in jail. I got it. But this is a public defender. She defended the people who nobody wants to defend, the people that everybody else avoids. And yet she has been chosen. What will she bring to this Supreme Court? Joining attorney C.K. Hoffler is attorney Darrell Jones, the chairman of the Transformative Justice Coalition, brilliant civil rights lawyer, and an equally brilliant lawyer, attorney Erin Connolly, who's doing what women do. She's got 20 jobs today. She's taking her kids to school, but she is a part of this conversation today. CK, why don't you set the table for us? Because this is an exciting pick, and we were down to three, according to press reports, three very qualified women. But she was different. Many people were saying that, a Judge Childs. Some people looked at her and said, well, she is not sided with labor in a lot of her decisions. So there was that. And then some people felt that Ms. Kruger was just a little young, maybe just a little too young. I don't know. But they were all eminently qualified, and they made that final cut. But Ketanji Brown Jackson is the nominee to the Supreme Court, and she's being taken around the Hill this week so that she can be vetted and so that they can vote upon her. And she has some interesting. Paul Ryan is a cousin by marriage, and she's beginning to get some heavyweight Republican support. Who is she? Why is this pick important?
Well, Santita, first of all three of the finalists, at least at the press identified as finalists, were eminently qualified and could have easily served on the U.S. Supreme Court, all three of them. I know that because I specifically vetted two of them that were being elevated in the federal system, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, as well as Judge Michelle Childs. So I know intimately well. This is not something I'm guessing. And the third judge, when I found out that she, among other women, African-American women, were being considered, I did some research. But while I was president of the NBA, of the National Bar Association, the first two we specifically vetted and supported. So I just want to get on record in saying that. Now, who is she? She is an extraordinary woman with extraordinary leadership skills as a jurist, as a judge, with very, very significant and impactful background as a judge, as a lawyer, as a professional, as a human being, who will bring to this court what we desperately need at this stage in 2022. She will run circles from a qualification standpoint. She will run circles around the sitting U.S. Supreme Court justices. Let me be clear. Run circles. There's not going to and should not be a single challenge to her qualifications. When there are challenges to her qualifications, it will be based on political ground, not based on qualifications. She is almost unimpeachable in terms of being a judge. The only reason why someone would criticize her is because she's a Black woman. So let's just be clear. That is my perspective, because her judicial temperament has already been established. Her knowledge of the court already established. She clerked on that court. She clerked for the very justice that she would ostensibly be replacing. Her knowledge in terms of the judiciary, the issues, unimpeachable once again, would run circles from a knowledge base around some of the sitting U.S. Supreme Court justices. So who is she? She's a Black woman. She's a Black girl who everyone, Black, brown, and white, and everyone in this country and the world would be able to look up to and say, yes, a resounding yes, she should be the next U.S. Supreme Court justice. That she got support from Republicans. She got support from Republicans when she was being elevated to the Court of Appeals. So that's nothing new. So that she's getting that support should not be surprising to anyone, no matter who she's related to by marriage, because her being related to by marriage is not why she's getting support. She should sail through the process. But of course, they're going to take her through the ringer because this is a political animal. We should not trust anyone that supported her before. And I don't know if we should trust anyone who's saying they support her now. The devil's going to be in the details, Santita, when she goes through the confirmation process. But she's eminently qualified without a question, hands down. People need to close their mouths and stop trying to make up stuff to challenge her qualifications.
Well, you know, it's interesting that Paul Ryan did say, because he, even as her cousin by marriage, testified on behalf when she was being confirmed before. He said, you know, we have our ideological differences. Politically, we are not in agreement, but her character, her judicial temperament, and her brilliance, unimpeachable. Please confirm her. Erin Connolly, your thoughts.
Good morning, Santita. Good morning to your wonderful panel this morning. Thank you for having me on. I am just so pleased that the Biden administration chose Judge Brown Jackson. Judge, I just want to make that clear. Not all nominees for the Supreme Court are judges. It's important to note that she did go through that confirmation process at the federal level and was supported by folks across the aisle, right? Democrats and Republicans agree that she is qualified. And I think it is important to note that there is a contrast with some of those sitting justices who have, from a resume perspective, on the federal bench and sometimes on any bench, she's more qualified than people that were nominated by many Republican presidents. So if there are people trying to poke holes in her deep, profound experience, not only in on the federal level, at the Supreme Court level, for folks who do clerk at the Supreme Court, and I know CK and Attorney Jones can talk of this as well. The Supreme Court is a completely different place than other courts. There's unique system that operates. There's politics within that system. The fact that she's been through that as a clerk, has navigated that, has helped write these opinions. She is. I cannot wait to read her her opinions for this court. And the political games that may come up, I hope, will be minimized by the fact that she has been through this process before. And I think the Biden administration is smart to put her up for this seat. And it has been way too long, way overdue. I know everyone agrees with that. But to have a Black woman on the Supreme Court that also has this experience in a public, to see how the system works from that side and not just the prosecutorial side of that argument, seeing the deficiencies within the system, seeing and understanding what those defendants go through to get representation, and understanding that shoring up that basic structure of our legal system is important, and a role of our Supreme Court.
Attorney Darrell Jones, your thoughts about this former public defender? I think the New York Times headline says the Supreme Court nominee helped clients others avoided. And then they talked about her defense of the Guantanamo base. People who are being kept there. I mean, that's what the public defender goes after the least of these. The people who the system is really trying to put away forever. And that was, she has a different tack. And then talked, as you mentioned, CK, and you and Attorney Mathis, she talked about her uncle, who took another turn in life, and it's part of the drug trade, and he's incarcerated right now, and she loves him, and that is that. Who is she, and what do you think she is bringing to the bench?
Santita, that's an excellent question. And, I think that both Aaron as well as CK sort of laid out the parameters for what I'm about to say and the groundwork for what I'm about to say with regards to Judge, soon-to-be Justice Brown Jackson. And that is, she brings a balanced approach to the Supreme Court. And I say that because of this. It's the public defenders across this country that are really the ones that are fighting for the constitutional rights of their clients to the end. And they have so many clients that they're defending. And they're not, and as you've indicated, they're not selecting them. They don't get to select their clients. They have the client that's given to them. And their purpose, their role is to fight for those constitutional rights that you and I both enjoy. So what she brings to the bench is this balance. You got to remember, Justice Brown Jackson comes from a background, not simply being a public defender dealing with the public, but she also was on the Sentencing Commission. So she brings that perspective of understanding the imbalancing that has occurred within sentencing within the criminal justice system. I think that when we start looking at this judicial temperament that she brings, when we look at the wealth of knowledge that she brings from her experiences as a Black woman growing up in America, that's what she brings to the Supreme Court bench. And that's a perspective that has been lacking since the bench has been in existence.
Well, hold that thought. Just before you go into that, because the press have harped on the fact that she's been asked about race before, and that she deftly handled the issue of race. And she said, do I think that race should color my judgment as a judge? No, I'm paraphrasing. But, ... I have lived life differently than many people. And so that is a consideration. I thought it was a very artful, and I mean that in the best way, highest and best way of putting it, because we all bring to the table, Darrell, who we are and how we live our lives.
Absolutely. We're the sum total of our experiences, right? So Justice Brown Jackson is no different. She is the sum total of her experiences. She cannot unlive what she has experienced as a Black woman. And she will bring that to the bench and will be part of whatever decision that she's a part of deliberating. And that's what's been missing. Since Thurgood Marshall actually has been off the bench, that's one of the pieces that's been missing, has been able to bring that perspective of being the everyday African-American experience from that bench. So I'm going to be really excited to watch her go through the process. And I tell you what I find interesting. I think that Aaron or CK mentioned the politics of it. On the politics of it, I don't think that this is the Democrats to fumble. I think what we are about to witness, if the Republicans do not get on board with this highly qualified appointee, a nominee for the Supreme Court, what we have right now is two of the three branches of government could be headed at the top of them by black women. And if we get to the point where the vote for the first black woman, African-American woman Supreme Court justice comes down to the vote being delivered by the country's first African-American woman vice president, what a historical moment it will be. Politically, that will charge up a base that you haven't seen, really charged as of yet, and that will do it. And I can't imagine that the Republicans will want to be on the other side of that.
Let me go to Dan from Chicago. Dan, what's on your mind?
Hi. Well, I don't know much about all the different people who are, picked for the Supreme Court. I don't know all their histories. But I truly feel that, race and color should not be an issue anymore. We're all one people here. If anything, we should learn by what's going on in Ukraine. There's a lot of tragedy in the world, and we're very lucky that we live where we do with all the rights we all have and all the good things we have. I think if this person is picked because of the color of her skin, it's going to be kind of a cloud over her. A lot of people are going to wonder, was she qualified or just picked because of the color? I personally don't care what color someone is.
Well, let me ask you this, Dan. What would you say?
Color as a prism as to whether or not you should pick someone. That's another wrong that we're doing to ourselves.
Well, Dan, what would you say about all of these other? We've only had 3 black justices. Well, 2. Well, we've had Thurgood Marshall and Clarence Thomas. She would be the third. We've had Sotomayor, Sandra Day O'Connor. We've had Kagan, Amy Coney Barrett. We've used race down through the years for more than 230 years. And what about these 230 odd years of white men? They're the only ones who were ever considered. And in fact, that does, if you will, no pun intended, it colors our thinking, Dan, because we assume that the person who's going to be nominated is a white man. Don't you think it's time we changed that?
I don't assume the person's going to be nominated.
Oh, you've got to. Come on, Dan. Dan, we got 230 years of this, Dan. Come on, Dan, sweetie. Come on.
Well, you know what?
Honey.
Slavery is something the United States inherited from.
No, but we still live with it.
We should be looked at as a good country.
But I think that we are. But let me just say this: we all bring that to our experience. I am not a colorless woman. I'm a black woman. Okay,
sure.
And I've lived life that way.
For the experience, but it shouldn't be your first. It shouldn't be the.
But it shapes you.
We do want to get rid of racism. We need to look at each other equal, not by color.
No, but I hear you. But I don't want to get rid of race. I just want to get rid of racism. Racism is my problem, not race. CK?
If I could add something to Dan's question.
And we can racism saying let's pick someone based on their color.
No. He's saying that what has been excluded from this experience in the Supreme Court has been this perspective. And that has been excluded, not just not included, it's been excluded. CK.
Well, I tell you what, that's an interesting point.
Hold on, Dan. I'm not cutting you off.
Dan, if I could add something. To your point, which I vehemently disagree with, but to your point, it's very simple. She is the most qualified person, period. Black, white, men, women. She's the most qualified person. Her qualifications, her experience, all of that, they are all unimpeachable. So if you have any question about whether she's merely being considered because of the color of her skin, based on your perspective, get that out of your mind, because she is the most qualified person, period, at this moment. But, as I said, I vehemently disagree with your perspective about it in this magnificent country. Because did you feel the same way when Sandra Day O'Connor was?
No, let's just go to Amy Coney Barrett.
Right. But let me just start from the beginning. Did you feel the same way when Ruth Bader Ginsburg was appointed. Did you feel the same way when Amy Coney Barrett was appointed? That's the question you should ask yourself. I'm not asking you to answer it. That's what you should ask yourself. But make no mistake, this nominee, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, is the best candidate, hands down, that is out there. Period. End of discussion. So you can rest assured that there's not going to be any type of a question about, well, I don't know, is it just a black thing? Oh, no.
But see,
the richness of her background adds, that's added value.
CK,
And
it's never been just a black thing. Black people, we have been raised to, that you have to be twice as good to even compete. That's the joke about affirmative action. Affirmative action means that you meet the baseline requirements. If you're a legacy at Harvard or Yale, even President George W. Bush said, I don't know how I got into Yale because I am not qualified. I was not qualified to be here. I'm not mad at him, but he got in because he was legacy. Okay? And so my thing is, racism is the problem, not race. All of those things should be considerations. All of them, because they all make you who you are. Erin is a white woman. She's white, she's a woman. She grew up in a military family. When you are talking to her, you need to consider all of those things. CK grew up in Europe in boarding schools. Hello, she's a black woman. And she's black, she's a woman. Look, all of this matters, everybody. But the thing is, I don't think that we should get here and say, oh, because she's a black woman and because the president said that I'm looking for a black woman, that should be a disqualifier. Absolutely not. It's insulting. Not while we've considered 230 years of white men exclusively, and the assumption is always that it's going to be a white man. Always. Sadly, that is true. And that needs to be broken up. You're discounting too much talent, too many perspectives. You need to have someone from Appalachia who's not poor but po on that court. Someone who has not forgotten that, someone who's going to bring that experience onto the court. I want to see all of that. I only have a couple more minutes before we have to go, and I know everyone's got to go today. We'll talk for a couple of minutes on Santita Jackson, on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. 30 seconds for you, Attorney Daryl Jones.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think that what you and CK were laying out today really lays it out best. And that is that we want a Supreme Court that is reflective of our country, that is reflective of the experience. And I think that when we're dealing with someone who has just the eminent qualifications of Justice Brown Jackson, that there's no question that she's qualified, but now we get the benefit of her experiences as an African-American woman living in America, being on that Supreme Court. And I look forward to her confirmation process and to seeing her sitting up there on the Supreme Court.
I can't wait to see her. I can't wait to see it. Erin, put your thoughts.
Well, I agree. I think that when we look at her resume qualifications, she is absolutely qualified and the most qualified person. I wish President Biden from the very first moment when he said he wanted to nominate a black woman to the Supreme Court, that he would have said, I want to nominate the most qualified person who I believe is a black woman in America, and that voice is important. The framing of that, I think, has gotten away from us, right? And I think that's what the caller was mentioning. That is not the purpose of this. The purpose is that Judge Brown Jackson is the most qualified woman, person, judge for this role. And I cannot wait to hear how she got to this spot, how she got into the school she got into, how she got those coveted internships, what she had to fight for, and the perseverance and brilliance that it takes to rise through that system. I mean, CK, I know you understand this very well as a woman in the legal field. You could go back to your first day of law school. How many women were in your class? How many white men were in your class? I bet the majority is obvious here. So she's been able to become the most qualified person in a system that benefits people that are not her. And I think that's what I want to see in her experience in these interviews.
That's right. The only qualified people are not white men. Sorry. Not sorry, but that's true. CK, 30 seconds belong to you.
Absolutely. You know, this past weekend, Santita, I was down the street about, 50, 60 miles down the street from where Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson grew up in South Florida. And let me tell you, that experience alone is such a refreshing drop of delight for the U.S. Supreme Court. We are going to be so inspired by her opinions, by her judicial temperament. And I'm claiming her victory going to be the next justice. Anything else is simply unacceptable. And we have to now more than ever support and stand in solidarity of this magnificent candidate. Period. End of discussion.
Amen. Because, I mean, she's bringing that with her. Because, Clarence Thomas came from poverty and just a couple of steps away from slavery. But it's like he has completely turned his back on all of that. I want someone who comes from these different backgrounds and who brings something to it. Really. One of the wealthiest families in the world, Anderson Cooper, comes from that, but he brings an empathy, a sympathy to his reporting that we need. He shouldn't be disqualified because he's a wealthy white guy. No. He understands marginalization, and he brings that with him. Whatever it is that God has given you the opportunity to live through it, and give something great to somebody else, because it all matters. Stay right here. Going to get some closing thoughts from the panel on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow. God bless you. I love you, everybody. CK?
Good morning, Santita again.
Attorney Jones.
Hey, good morning, Santita.
Is there anything else that you would like to say that was left unsaid?
Not really from my standpoint. I just don't want people to think, oh, it's over, we're good. She now is confronting the fight of her life, even if the process is smooth, because we're in a political space. That's the only reason.
What do you mean by that? Elaborate. CK? Ooh, is she still there? Well, Attorney Jones, what do you think she's going to be facing in this confirmation process?
Well, Santita, I anticipate that this is where it gets highly political, and it's probably going to become very partisan. And, the real question becomes, will there be Republicans that have voted for her before that will now stick with her? Because this is her first time through. So that's the real question. But, it's already, the partisanship piece to it has already begun. And you see people like Lindsey Graham that supported her previously and now, is certainly sending signals that that she's a problem. So, that's what we're, looking to try to avoid. But again, I think that if they follow where Graham is going, that it's not going to benefit certainly not the Republican Party, but it will strengthen the Democratic Party, because you're going to see people, like I said, if you have Vice President Harris casting the deciding vote for the first African-American woman to sit on the Supreme Court, what a moment that's going to be. So, I don't know. I just see it as a situation where she's already been through the process. She's already been vetted, and she's been re-vetted. So I don't think there's much that's there. And the question is, are they against having an African-American woman sit on the Supreme Court?
And some people are, and I get it. And next, I just have to fight you on that. Because the thing is, there's some people who don't want women on the Supreme Court. That's how backward some people are with their thinking. I get it. It's just, we're living in, it's a whole new world, everybody. Whole new world. And it ought to be. Every perspective you can get, Attorney Daryl Jones. Daryl, every perspective you can get, you need to have. You need to have someone who has to go. Our mayor here in Chicago, she has a brother who is in prison. And one of the things that grabbed my heart about her was that as a federal prosecutor, she still goes to see him now. And they said they would see her go. She'd come into the prison. She'd, surrender her identification badges and all of that, because she loves her brother. And she would go, and she goes to spend time with him. I said, Mad respect for her. This is way before she became mayor. This is way before she had that kind of life. No, 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 no. She said, no. She said, that's my brother and I love him. Next. I don't care where he is. I'm going to go see him. And I'm going to go spend time with him. Next. We need that. We need that experience.
And I suspect that Justice Brown Jackson will do the same thing. You know,
that's
right.
I mean,
you know, she has a brother that has had difficulties with the criminal justice system. She's not going to turn her back on any of that. She's going to. It gives her a different perspective on it all. She has an inside perspective on it, not just from the 10,000 feet in the air, but she has the on the ground perspective of what it's like.
But look, let me tell you, with all of these unconvicted felons on Wall Street and walking up and down the street every day. Next on all of that, okay? Next. We just need to stop it. Just stop. Stop. Because there are too many unconvicted felons out here, too many war criminals out here, too many people who need to be in prison for the hurt that they have imposed upon other people. So I don't even want to hear that. You keep on living. You're going to do something wrong, think about doing something wrong, have something wrong done to you. You're going to do something wrong to somebody else. It's just just keep on living. Stop judging people and slicing and dicing people. Let's move forward. Let's find a way to bring people back into society, Daryl, not flush them out. No society is so rich that it can afford to get rid of any of God's visions and creations, which is what each human being is. We are a vision of who God sent us here to be. And to the extent that we do not actualize the potential of every human being, we have committed a grievous sin. Grievous. Because you have thwarted God's dreams and God's ambitions for the human race. Shame on all of us. Shame on us for not having a school system that develops everybody's gifts, be they academic or vocational, artistic, whatever it is. We're all poorer for that. There's some great song that has gone unsung. There's some nurse who was not developed. And you can just keep on going on and on and on. We keep playing these games with people as if we win by subtraction and not by addition. We're not going to be blessed for that. We're not going to be blessed, and we're not being blessed. Now we have a shortage, Daryl, of healthcare providers. We don't have enough doctors. We don't have enough nurses. We don't have enough LPNs. We ain't got enough. While we're sitting up here arguing about affirmative action, figuring out how many people we can exclude from school. We're not trying to figure out how we can include in school. In places that are developing all over the world, they're building universities. They're building schools. We're closing them in the United States. Think about that, everybody. That means we're contracting, we're not expanding, which means we are not growing, we're dying. That sounds harsh, Daryl, but it's real.
I think that you're right on point, and it's just so important that we really push to be that inclusive society.
Yes.
And as you've indicated, in order for everyone to be a contributing member to the growth of this country and to society, you got to give them the opportunity. And if they need, because of the history, because they've been discriminated against, because they've been held back, if they need some other assistance to get up to speed, get them up to speed so that they can be the best contributor. They can give the most of their experience, and they can share that experience. Because there's somebody somewhere that is having that same experience and thinking that they're the only one. And so for someone to be able to say, you can do it, I've been where you are, that's what I think it's all about, Santita.
Amen. And for someone to remember where they were and then to extend themselves to someone who was there or someone who was beneath that. That's my thing. It's my thing. Oh my gosh, Daryl, my father and mother pass out food all the time because they remember when my father's scholarship money ran out when he was at the University of Chicago. And he remembers the Christmas when they had no money. My grandmother and great-grandmother worked and my grandfather worked, but the money was just short. And Mr. Dave, who God bless him, I had the privilege of knowing him. He was an old man when I knew him, and he was an old man when my daddy knew him. And he didn't know how to fill out his relief papers, but my grandmother was an educated woman. She was on her way to college when she got pregnant with my father. And so in the neighborhood, she became like the super social worker for the neighborhood. She would fill out people's relief papers, help them get started with their businesses. And all of these things I started finding out when she was passing on. Didn't know my grandmother was that involved in the community. That having been said, this particular Christmas, they had gone to church because they were just going to thank God anyway, but they didn't have any money. And they came home to all of these groceries, Daryl, on the front porch. And my great grandmother and grandmother said, and grandfather said, well, somebody made a mistake. Let's put this over here, keep them cool, and we'll wait. We'll find out who these groceries belong to, and we'll just figure out Christmas dinner. Mr. Dave made his way down to the house, and got on my grandmother. Said, you need to get on these boys. They can't be this lazy. They need to put these groceries away. These grocery, as he would put it, away. And my grandmother said, it's not them this time. Somebody mistakenly dropped this food off. We're trying to find out who it is so we can get it to them. He said, it was no mistake. I did it. I just got my check, Miss Helen. And I wanted to thank you and Charlie Henry and Miss Tippy. Wow. So whenever my father can give people anything, he remembers that moment. You've got to remember those moments in your life. And if you keep on living, if you really are conscious and conscientious, you'll know that you've had them all the time. And you're supposed to use your moments that have hurt you the most, where you have felt like you were the least, to make other people make them feel like they're the most. We have to grow up, everybody. Just grow up. Please. Please. And I think that has been Daryl, like a hallmark of my life. I mean, on my worst days, my father's made me feel like I was the best thing that ever happened to him. You should do that for everybody. I was just at a funeral on Saturday. Timmy Tope Olumala, bless his heart. He drove me in his cab for 20 years. This is the most wonderful human being. And in the 2.5 hours of his funeral, everybody had the same testament. They said what a wonderful human being he was. He was an angel. Sometimes he wouldn't even let you pay him for the cab ride because he wanted to help you. That's all he wanted to do. And when I saw him, I said, "You finished your work here. You got it. God bless you, Mr. Olumala. God bless you. God bless you, Mr. Olumala. God bless you." I said, "Wow. When I get out of here, I hope I get 2.5 hours of some great stories, and of some people who are gonna miss me because I tried to make your life better." Let's try and do that, everybody. Let's try and do that. Daryl, is there anything else you want to say, honey bun?
I think we're about covered it, Santita.
Oh, I think we've covered it. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. God bless us. God bless us all. And God bless you, Daryl. Thank you so much. Are you going to be in Alabama this weekend?
I will be there.
Well, perhaps I will. I don't know. We'll see. I'm trying to see if
I hope so. Look forward to seeing you.
Oh gosh, God bless you. Honey, it's just a whole lot because I still have reference show on Sunday. And that means I'd have like an hour's drive, and we'll have to see. We'll have to see. I'm going to try and go. I'll let you know. But we have a lot to cover this week. You will be hearing from me, Attorney Daryl Jones.
Thank you so much.
Blessings to you.
Talk to you soon.
Sid, God bless. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Devin, for a great show, everybody. I love you, love you, love you, love you, love you. And D-Ray, you're going to be hearing me sing much, much more. I promise you before the Lord. I got you. Love you, everybody. See you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show.